It started on a chilly Saturday morning when I slipped and fell on the front steps while trying to bring in groceries. The pain in my wrist was sharp, immediate, and blinding, but I didn't cry out. I just held my arm close and looked toward the front door, half expecting someone to notice. But they didn't. Mom was too busy brushing the golden retriever's fur for my sister's upcoming puppy glamour shoot, and Dad was adjusting lighting in the backyard like some second-rate pet photographer. Meanwhile, I sat on the cold ground, trembling, forgotten. I finally stumbled inside, barely managing to open the door with my uninjured hand. My sister, Clarissa, glanced up from the couch, where she was practicing poses with her dog for Instagram. "Can you not drip sweat on the rug?" she scoffed. This carpet was cleaned for Bella's shoot. "My wrist," I managed to whisper. "I think it's broken." Mom didn't even look up. "There's ice in the freezer. Use that," she muttered, tying a pink bow on the dog's tail. "We're not postponing the photo shoot because you're being dramatic." Dramatic. That word echoed louder than the pain. I stood there, clutching my rapidly swelling hand while my family cooed over a dog wearing sunglasses. Clarissa giggled. "Come on, Bella, let's show them how a real star behaves." I wasn't even sure if I was more hurt physically or emotionally at that point. Hours passed. No one offered to drive me to the hospital. My father actually said, "You're old enough to Uber." And that's what I did. Alone, in silence, cradling my broken wrist in a scarf, I took a rideshare to the emergency room. The doctor confirmed what I already knew: clean break, right at the joint. I wore a heavy cast and a heavier heart as I returned home, expecting maybe some guilt, some concern. Nothing. When I walked in, Clarissa was uploading edited puppy photos to Instagram with captions like "Pawfection" and "My Little Superstar." My mother didn't even ask how the hospital visit went. "Just don't get your cast near the backdrop," she warned. "It's white satin." I slept in my room that night with tears soaking my pillow, wondering how the people I called family could be so indifferent. I had always felt like the background character in someone else's highlight reel. But this was different. This was betrayal with glitter and pink bows. That night, I stared at the ceiling and made a quiet vow to myself. This wasn't going to be my life forever. One day, they'd wish they had treated me differently, and when that day came, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. My absence would speak volumes. I didn't leave right away. Sometimes the deepest wounds aren't the ones that make you walk out the door screaming. They're the ones that make you stay quiet, build a plan, and walk out so gracefully they don't even realize they've lost you until it's too late. That broken wrist healed slower than I expected, but something else inside me started healing too. My silence. I stopped trying to be noticed, stopped begging for scraps of attention. Instead, I turned inward. I began waking up earlier, researching, learning, building. I'd always been good at graphic design and digital branding, but I'd never had the confidence to launch anything on my own. Now, every insult became fuel. When Clarissa laughed at me for wearing the same old hoodie again, I added another hour to my freelance schedule. When my mom rolled her eyes and asked if I'd ever get a real job, I quietly accepted 2 new clients. When my dad complained that I ate too much for someone who contributes so little, I skipped dinner and designed an entire campaign for a local skincare brand. They paid double my asking price. Within 6 months, I had a name in the industry. Small at first, local business owners, boutique startups, but enough to survive. I moved out of my parents' home under the excuse of wanting some space. They didn't object. Not once did they ask where I was going or if I needed help. They were too busy planning Clarissa's latest Instagram collaboration with a luxury pet apparel company. My sister had somehow monetized her dog more than most people could monetize a college degree. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was determined. I rented a tiny studio apartment downtown, the kind with peeling paint and a leaky faucet. But it had high-speed internet, a desk, and no one calling me a burden. That was all I needed. I reinvested every dollar I made. I bought courses. I took on sleepless nights. I studied brand strategy, online algorithms, social media virality. I created anonymous success behind a glowing screen. Soon, I wasn't just designing for others, I was building my own digital consultancy. Quietly, steadily, powerfully. The poetic part. One of my clients was a rising PR manager looking to rebrand a high-profile business couple's failing pet-centric media company. When I opened the portfolio, it was Clarissa and her boyfriend. Apparently, after a short viral peak, their content had become predictable, inorganic, and painfully desperate. Ouch. They had no idea it was me behind the email address. I crafted a rebranding strategy so effective it went viral in under a week. Clarissa made the news, again, but she never knew who had built her comeback. I signed the entire contract under my business alias and collected the 5-figure paycheck with a quiet grin. It didn't stop there. 3 months later, I bought a beautiful modern office space. It had exposed brick, high ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling windows. But most importantly, it sat directly across from the studio where Clarissa filmed her dog's content. I often watched from my window as she struggled to get Bella to pose, surrounded by stressed-out interns and unpaid brand reps. She still thought she was the star. Meanwhile, I was running full campaigns for national wellness brands. Then came the invitation. My parents sent a group text. "Clarissa's being honored by the local social club. Come celebrate." Attached was a flyer with Clarissa and Bella in a tiara. I stared at the screen for a long moment, and then I replied, "Wouldn't miss it." But I didn't go alone. I arrived in my custom-tailored blazer, flanked by my assistant, a sharply dressed man with a calm demeanor and an expensive wristwatch. His name was Nathan, my sister's ex-boyfriend. Turns out he wanted more than Instagram fame. He wanted stability, vision, a future. And I offered all of that when I hired him as my assistant. He opened my door, held my purse, and called me boss in front of everyone. Clarissa blinked. My mother choked on her mimosa. My father looked like he was calculating his entire life's worth of favoritism in real time. But I just smiled and took a seat right next to the guest of honor. Clarissa didn't say a word. Not when Nathan refilled my glass. Not when I gave my own impromptu speech on authentic branding. Not when the crowd clapped louder for me than they ever had for her. They knew. Without ever raising my voice, I had become what they told me I'd never be. And the best part? I didn't need their validation anymore. I had outgrown their table and built my own. 3 months passed after the celebration turned showdown. I didn't expect to hear from my parents again. Honestly, I didn't want to. But then came the letter. Not a text. Not a call. A letter. Handwritten, folded neatly in an envelope with my name scrawled across it in my father's slanted script. For a moment, I just stared at it, like it might explode with everything I'd locked away since I was a teenager. I opened it anyway. Inside, my father's words were odd, an invitation to a private family dinner, a chance to reconnect. He wrote, "We realize now that sometimes we see too late what we should have seen all along." And that last line, "Please come, for your mother's sake if not mine." I almost laughed, but curiosity got the better of me. The restaurant was one of those old-money, 5-star places with heavy chandeliers and steak knives that cost more than my childhood wardrobe. When I arrived, I paused at the door. The hostess smiled, looked me up and down, and then whispered, "They're already inside. This way, Ms. Carson." She led me to the back, private room. Expensive, intimate, like they were planning a surprise. And they were. I stepped in and froze. On the wall behind them hung a blown-up photograph, my sister's engagement party. The same night I had fractured my wrist and they told me not to make a big deal. Everyone was there in the picture. My parents, Clarissa, extended family, even Bella, the dog. Everyone, except me. Again. "Do you see now why we asked you here?" My mom began gently, motioning to the photograph like it was an apology wrapped in nostalgia. I blinked. "You brought me here to show me this again?" "No," my dad said. "We want to put it behind us. We've talked to Clarissa. She understands how hurtful it was. We're sorry." Clarissa, seated at the edge of the table, gave a plastic smile and said nothing. Her eyes flicked nervously to Nathan, who had followed me in and stood silently by the door. That's when I took a breath and pulled out my own surprise. I placed a simple white envelope on the table. My father looked confused. What's this? A lease termination. He blinked. Termination? You know that building your wellness brand is housed in? The one you sublet under my LLC's umbrella? I smiled. Your sweetheart deal ends in 30 days. I'm reclaiming the property. My mother's face paled. You own that building? For the last 6 months. They were silent. Then I stood, walked over to the wall, and removed the photo myself. It didn't shake. My hands were steady. I used to think I had to keep fighting for a place in this family, I said softly. Turns out, I just needed to stop asking for a chair and build my own table. Clarissa finally spoke. So what? You're cutting us off. For what? Revenge? I looked at her. No anger, just truth. For peace. I turned to Nathan. Let's go. He held the door for me as I walked out, leaving the silence behind like a final page turned. Later that week, the press picked up on the building repossession. Apparently, Clarissa's brand was now scrambling to find new space and new investors. I didn't smile when I read it. I didn't gloat. Because it wasn't about watching them fall, it was about finally standing tall. A few weeks after that, I hung a new frame in my office. Not a photo, but a certificate. My company had been selected as one of the top 10 emerging brands in the country. Underneath the plaque, I taped a copy of my X-ray from the day my wrist was broken, not as a wound, as proof that every break can lead to something stronger. And sometimes the most poetic revenge is living beautifully in the peace they tried to take from you.